Hi, I'm Presley Perez.
Hi, my name's Marvella Soltero.
Hello, I'm Sarah Fang.
Hi, I'm Ellie Martinez.
So we're all students at Cal State Long Beach, currently taking a class called Introduction to Teaching for Equity in Diverse Contexts. And over the last semester, we've learned about a lot of different important topics that are happening within the education system today. But one that I think really touched home with all of us was the topic of mental health within the K through 8 education system and the lack of resources that are being found there.
So, as a group, we chose this issue to discuss because we have been personally affected or have known someone close to us who has. There are schools that have resources such as food pantries, counselors, and break rooms, but not all schools are. But not all. If schools do provide these assets, a majority of the time, many students are completely unaware they exist and continue to struggle without assessing help. It is important that we bring attention to how useful these resources can be for both students and faculty.
Because of this, we wanted to focus on reaching out to members of our community as a whole. So, myself, Presley, Ellie, and Sarah all reached out to students within elementary school, middle school, and high school and asked them the same question.
I, Marvella, went ahead and asked a third grade teacher and an elementary school principal some questions to wellness and if their school provides anything for
So I interviewed my younger sister. She's 9 and she's in elementary school. I believe if you're 9, you're in fourth grade. Yeah. So our first question that we all decided to ask our people that we interviewed was, "Have you ever felt unmotivated during school?" And my sister, I kind of had to pry answers from her. Like I had to keep pulling more and more because, she's 9 and she didn't have a lot to say. But she said, "No, I just don't think." Okay, so our second question was, "Do you ever feel like how you feel at home affects how you do or feel at school?" And her response was, "No, not really, because I don't have a lot going on at home right now, and it's not really the same as at school." And then our last question was, "Do you know if your school has counselors slash someone you can talk to about these feelings?" And so for the last question, where she responded with, "Yes, we have a principal, we have a bunch of teachers, and a bunch of random staff." To me, the way that I perceived that was sort of like she said yes, but it was kind of an uninformed yes. Like we have a principal, we have a bunch of teachers, and a bunch of random staff. It's sort of like just reciting like the support that's supposed to be there in theory, but not really like, oh yeah, like we have this counselor, she helps with this, she helps with this. I've gone to her to see her this time. It's sort of like just the school tells you that the support is there, but they have not like actively gone out and seeked help from these resources. Um, so I just thought that was interesting. Again, she's only 9, so it's definitely very different from, let's say, a middle school or high school student's experience. But I just did think that was kind of interesting how her response was like confident, like, "Yeah, we have this and this. But yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say about that last point.
I definitely agree with you on that because as somebody who did go through a traumatic experience before, like right before entering elementary school with my dad passing away, like I would felt comfortable enough to talk to my teachers about stuff, which is awesome. And I'm grateful that your sister also feels that way because that's an awesome thing to like have teachers
Mm-hmm.
that care enough about their students like that. But it's like nobody would ever go out of their way to help me through like those situations. Like I don't ever remember getting brought up to a counselor after like during school time and stuff. So I definitely think it's interesting that like the only support that I think especially elementary schoolers really know about are the people that are right in front of them every single day. Like they don't know who's up in the office and who can support them.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I did want to add to the conversation was, in my own experience, I didn't feel the need to actively seek out help in elementary school. I didn't really have any sort of, traumatic experiences where I would like require that type of support. But my girlfriend, she actually had a really hard time growing up. So she had a, pretty messy home situation in elementary school. And she has told me that because of this, a lot of a sign of poor mental health in young students often is acting out. Like that is it's sucky, but it is like very true. So she started to act out, nothing crazy, just kind of like talking in class, being kind of like a wild child, that type of stuff. And she told me that there was nothing in terms of support, although faculty and staff knew her situation. It was more so disciplinary action. So her acting out was met with only, don't do that. Not like as opposed to why is she doing that? What can we do to prevent this? Where is this coming from? It's very sudden and not like her. So she did tell me that, she would have to go to the principal's office and he never really talked to her about like, what's going on to cause this and it just basically it was just never really addressed, but it was more so kind of like pushed under the carpet and like, don't do this, don't act out, this type of thing.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing that.
That's really interesting to think about because, like, I feel like that's very similar to a lot of people's experiences of where teachers don't try to like look for the reason why students act the way they are. Instead, they just think, oh, they're misbehaving, they're just a bad student, so we have to discipline them instead of trying to like figure out the reason as to why they're acting the way they are and trying to figure out a way how to like help them so that they wouldn't not technically like be that way but like act out. Because I remember when I was in elementary school, there, what's it called, for my family, I wasn't really raised in like a good household, but we did what we could. And I remember acting out a lot as a kid. And when I was younger, I never understood why. And my teachers never tried to like help me figure it out. They were all just like, oh, she's just being a kid. She's just doing what she wants to do. Let's I can't really like word it out, but then as I grew up, I understood why I started acting out that way. But
Kind of. You guys are making me think a lot or reflect a lot because I work at an elementary school, and some kids, there's this one specific kid who would always act out. And we were always on him. Hey, so and so, like, stop and knock it out. Phone call after phone call to parents. He would be sent to the office. And I never once sat next to him and asked him, hey, is everything okay? And, it made me sad, Sarah, that you said no one really, like, asked you. And I don't want to be like that. I want to be like that one role model where kids look up to me, or not necessarily look up to me, but they'll remember me in the future years and be like, "Wow, like Miss Soltero like helped me out." And so, well, this goes back to me to what you were saying, how like no one really asked you like what was going on. And so I never asked this kid what happened. Like I was the same, the same person, like, go sit over there or go to the principal. And now that I get your perspective, that's not okay. it it's totally wrong.
I completely agree with you, and to make you feel better and, like, also to play teacher's advocate because that is, like, what we're studying to do, like, it's really difficult to be like, you're in charge of how many students when you're working with kids, like, you obviously, at the end of the day, care about each and every single one of them.
yeah, it makes a lot of sense because teachers have like hundred of students that they have to take care of. So it's kind of hard to like see which one.
Yeah, well, all I was going to really add to this conversation, and then we can like circle back if you remember what you were going to say, but I was just going to say that, as future educators, all we really can do is if we do notice a sudden change in behavior in students, that can be really indicative of their mental health status at the time. So just to notice those things and then do what we can in terms of offering them support. So whether that's like establishing some sort of trust with that student, offering your support if they do decide or realize that they do need it.
And the teacher that I TA for today, when I went to work, I noticed by my desk that there's like this colorful changing octopus, and I didn't think much of it. And so during recess, the teacher came up to me and she goes, "Oh wow, like the um so and so changed the octopus." And I was like, what are you talking about?" And she goes, "Yes, I got this octopus for so and so. So when she isn't feeling herself, the color."
That is such an amazing idea. I really like it. I've never heard about it before, but I know there was something similar with I forgot where I read it from, but a teacher used sticky notes so that the students could like tell her how they felt so that they don't have to like go up to her personally or like talk or like go up during like a class and be like, I don't feel well. Instead, she would have sticky notes that the students could like write how they're feeling, and then if they don't feel well, they could give her the sticky note or like leave it on her desk so that she knows, so that she doesn't have to like call on them during or yeah, she doesn't call on them when they have like when like she's calling for people to answer questions. She knows not to choose that certain person. And hearing about your experience, Marvella, it was just like, oh wow, that's such an amazing idea. And it's really cute too, because it's a colorful octopus.
It it really is. And the only thing is, the octopus is specifically for this one.
Definitely, and I was gonna say, I think that I agree, or sorry, about, like, the octopus just being for one student, like, I totally feel for her, and I think that that's a really awesome way that you guys can be there for her, and I was also gonna add on to the about the sticky notes. I think that's super awesome because it reaches to all of the students in the classroom, and, like, it's hard to tell as an educator which student is, like, if they're just misbehaving because they're hyper and they had a lot of candy that day, or if they're actually going through something and, like, there's a reason that they're acting the way that they have. And I feel like having those sticky notes also allows them to communicate to the teacher, like, why they're going through that. And if there are more than
Yeah, I was just going to add that I think it's a really important distinction to make, like you said, Presley, about um, is this kid acting out or is there something, you know, not, wait, I said that weird. Is this kid just messing around and, um, you know what I'm trying to say? Or is there something deeper going on behind, like the door? But I think that the octopus example that we mentioned earlier, just doing small things, even as small as that, I think it's really important to take a step to improve mental health because it's just a small act that just really shows students that you care.
So for my student, her name is Hanny and she's in middle school. I asked her the same questions as Ellie asked the elementary schooler, and her response to if she's ever felt unmotivated during school was many times. Sometimes I wonder the next question asked was if what happens at home affects how she feels at school, and she said yes. Especially things happen at home, or if I get into an argument with my parents, my friends can automatically tell that my behavior is different than usual. Plus, this also adds stress to my day since instead of focusing on her teachers, I'll be more worried about how to apologize or where stuff went wrong. The third question asked was if she knows there are teachers or counselors at her school that she could talk about her feelings with. She said yes, but I haven't really ever went, so I don't know much about what the counselor does. And she could usually talk to her teachers that she's willing to trust or knows who are willing to listen. And many times she said that she's spoken to the nurse or the office lady since she has health problems, so she sees them a lot. And the last question we asked was if there was an option to speak to someone or have a space created for her mental well being, what would she like for them to offer? And her response was Just someone to listen to me vent or rant about my day. Sometimes I'll want advice or just guidance, and not for them to judge me or yell at my decisions. I know some of the choices I make aren't good, but if they were to yell at me instead of lecturing me and still being calm with me, I'll probably cry and never come back. When I read her responses, because I asked
And all I was really gonna say was this the person you interviewed is in middle school, right?
her, that is correct.
Okay, well, yeah, I just wanted to make sure before I said this, but I just remember in my experience being in middle school, you're only there for 2 years, so I definitely never felt close enough to anyone in staff there, to where I felt comfortable enough to like confide in them if I ever needed that support. Um, so I think that could be a reason. When you're in elementary school, you have like 7 years to sort of have an opportunity to get closer to a staff member there. And then high school, you have 4 years. College, you have however many you really want. Um, in middle school, you're limited to two most of the time. So I do think that plays a factor as well. Um, and in terms of fixing that problem, maybe just more like teachers and staff can just extend themselves more openly to students who need support. I would say.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about now that you bring it up of how you don't really get that much time to like know your teachers because she's a seventh grader and this is her first year because there's only 2 years out of middle school, so this is her first year there. So it's really interesting to think about how she was able to like trust the teachers and she knows all this stuff because boy oh boy when I was in middle school I did not know what to do. I was just like I knew I was depressed, but I was too scared to talk to people about it because I didn't know what they were gonna like tell me. Since my family would always be like, "Oh, this is just a phase. You're just trying." I remember a lot of my family members would always tell me like, "You're you're just trying to fit in with the kids. Like you're not really depressed. You're not sad. You just want to be like one of them. It's because your friends say that you're depressed, or it's because your friends say that they're depressed that you say you're depressed. So you're not really sad. You're just trying to fit in with all of them." Which made me think like, is that true? Am I really not sad? Like, should I be feeling this way? Do I have the right to feel this way? Because of like my family situation, like we were okay. I knew we were all right, but then there's some stuff on the side where I knew wasn't right. But because most of my family members went through it, I just thought, oh, this is just something normal that everybody goes through. When really it wasn't. It took me a long time to learn, and I started learning more about it because of my sister. But yeah,
I love how they just gaslit you into believing that your problems weren't real and like you weren't really depressed or anything like that. That's crazy to me. But yeah, I was gonna say the only thing I had to really offer was like a lot of the times, at least in my experience, like my dad will compare his generation to mine, and say, like you guys are all depressed. It's like a movement. It's like a trend to be depressed, and no one was depressed in my generation, whatever. And I just kind of thought that went into the same idea of sort of like blanketing people into the same. It's really weird how people do that, but yeah, I just thought that was really crazy.
I can totally relate. Um, in my Mexican household, my parents are old school, and so I'm a victim of sexual abuse. And since I was in elementary, I've been going to therapy. Um, it wasn't until uh, recently, actually, like a few years ago, maybe like 4 years ago, um, where I started seeing a psychologist to get antidepressants. And when I told my dad that I was on antidepressants,
another thing that I wanted to add was when Marvel, our parents don't really understand what we're going through, but it's something I keep saying it. It's interesting to think about because like I could see how I can see that my parents I'm trying to like form the words in my head because we're able to know that we're feeling something and how like we're depressed or like our generation we're able to see it and we're able to understand our feelings and then sometimes we could see it in like our friends and that's why we ask like, oh, are you okay? And it's interesting to think about because like when I see my parents I could tell that they're not okay, but because they were raised in a certain way and they were raised to believe that they're fine and they can't feel the emotions that we're feeling right now, or they can't feel sad or they can't feel depressed because that's just something that never existed in their lifetime. But we're able to see that they're not okay, and if we try to bring it up to them and we try to be like, are you sure you're fine? Like it's okay not to be okay now. Finish it. Because my dad is the oldest in his family from when he was an elementary schooler to now. He's been carrying like all the stress and everything because I think my grandma has like 10 kids and he came to the United States when he was like 10. So he's the one who's been helping his parents, helping his siblings. He brought them all to school. He did summer schools. He did
Okay, so I interviewed a high schooler named Maya that is in the ninth grade. And I asked her very similar questions to the ones that Ellie and Sarah also asked their interviewees. So when I asked her, have you ever felt unmotivated during school? She said, yes, it's very difficult for me to wake up for class in the mornings, and especially in more difficult classes such as biologies. Since I struggle to understand what they're saying, I have no motivation to want to understand what they're saying, which I completely understand because I remember being really frustrated in high school with stuff. Especially biology. I'm taking a bio class in college too right now, and it's so hard to want to understand when you literally have no comprehension of what they're talking about. And especially in high school, I know for me, like I was able to reach out to my teachers and get extra help for them when I put in that effort, but it was like nobody was reaching out to me to fix my grade, and especially now in college, it's not the same. To the next question, um, when I asked her, "Do you ever feel like how you feel at home affects how you do or feel at school?" She said, "Yes, if I do get into arguments with my family, it usually affects me or leaves me in a bad mood all day long at school," which was very similar to, Sarah's the person that Sarah interviewed, her answer. Um, and honestly, when I was interviewing Maya, she didn't have a lot to say, which I think is because she's in high school and she feels a little bit more reserved about talking about these things. Because I know, like, the older that I got, the more I didn't feel comfortable talking about my emotions until I finally had a breakthrough, and now it's all I can talk about. But I realize that happens at different times for everyone, and I think she just wants to keep these like ideas more to herself. Because when I asked her the final question, if your school has counselors or someone you can talk to about those feelings, she said, "Yeah, I do, but I've never talked to them before." And that's all she really had to say about that. But I also went to the same school as her, and I remember, like, walking within the hallways, like, if you saw somebody walking into the psychiatrist's office, like, there were people talking about it later at lunch. And, like, I remember on my dad's anniversary, like, I would just be a mess some days, and I'd go talk to my college counselor, which I'm very grateful I had a close relationship with him, because my 2 other siblings had him before me, but for the most part, people didn't talk to their college counselors like that. It was either they talked to them about school or they talked to the
I went to a
psychiatrist about their
TGI Fridays,
emotions, and there are very few
right?
people that were
hear
willing
but
to
drink.
go to the
Okay, I'm gonna.
psychiatrist on their own without being called there, and I think it's awesome that the psychiatrist could be there for the students that, like, the school was aware of having issues, but it's like there's so many students that you don't know if that's a possibility. If, like, there's so many other there's I mean, I went to a really big high school, so there's so many students that I feel like there's no possible way they could reach out to every single one of them. They really just have the opportunity to reach out to the ones that families have reached out to them or they know an incident has happened. And I know obviously funding has to be involved, but this is like a mental health crisis that I think is important and should be put into it. It's worth putting money into. And, just like if there was more than one psychiatrist at at, like, school or, like, there was one, like, designated to each student and they talked at least, like, once a semester even. I don't know how to explain it, but I think that would be a really cool process to have because I don't think it's, like, as commonly, just accepted. I think it's becoming more, but we're not there yet.
Okay, so I interviewed the third grade teacher, and this is a interview. Hello, I'm here with Miss A, and I will be asking her a few questions. How do you deal with mental health as a teacher? As a teacher, I try to maintain positivity by venting in discussion with my colleagues, but I also speak with my family. And right now, I am looking for outside counseling help just to alleviate the pressures that we're dealing with right now. Does your work provide any sources for teachers to distress or help you in any way when you are feeling overwhelmed? They have part of our medical insurance. They have what's called EAP, and it's basically they'll pay for a couple hours if you would like to seek counseling services. But then after you've exceeded those hours, you're on your own. Um, with my school being a Christian-based school, we can also seek guidance from our pastors or anyone in administration that has time. Is there anything else you would like for schools to start doing to help teachers out? I personally think they should have someone public, parochial, private, have a specific counselor that works with teachers and you can have a time to meet with them during your prep periods, for school, after school, because one, we shouldn't be paying for for our sessions when it comes to mental health. I think it should be something that should be provided, and it would be convenient to have it on campus and have a professional to talk to. What do you do to help your students when they are unmotivated? When my students are unmotivated, I try to go back and see what it's stemming from or the source, if it's that they're tired or that they're not understanding the content, and I will have a discussion one-on-one with them, and then we will plan accordingly or accommodate their needs. And if it's something that's personal, then I'll allow them or I'll refer them to the counselor. Thank you for your time, and this concludes this interview. All right, so that included the teacher interview. And then for the principal interview, the first question was, how do you deal with your mental health as a principal? His response was, you need to have a good support system, both at home and at school. At home, my spouse has always supported me by listening to what I'm dealing with and giving me reassurance that I'm doing the right thing. At work, my admin team is my support system where we make decisions together and share the workload. I've recently added an exercise routine by riding my bike to help me take care of my physical health. Does your school provide any sources for teachers to distress or help in any way if they are feeling overwhelmed? LAUSD offers teachers mental health services if needed. Since the pandemic, we've been focusing a lot on social emotional well-being and stress management professional development. Other than that, most teachers manage their own level of stress. If not, what would you like for districts to start doing to help your school out? The district offers mental health services to teachers through their medical insurance programs. At this point, it is hard to say what else we can do because medical information for each employee is protected under HIPAA or HIPAA. So unless teachers share what they are going through, we would never know what is going on. There is still a shame aspect when it comes to mental health issues, so this is a very touchy subject. All you can do is offer assistance if you feel like someone needs it. As principal, how does your school help with students with their mental health? The district has personnel that can provide counseling or refer students and families to a community partners that offer mental health services. The school psychologist can offer light counseling, but for the most part, students are referred to a mental health agency or a private insurance for services. We help students by providing parents with information as to where they can go for assistance. And that was the interview with the principal. And honestly, I was kind of struck by one of the responses he made, which was most teachers manage their own level of stress, because I would have thought that, as a small community, which is a school, they would kind of not necessarily be there for each other, but support each other. And, like, for instance, if I'm feeling overwhelmed or whatever, under the weather or anything like that, I would want my colleagues to kind of motivate me or just kind of be there for me, if that makes sense.
I definitely agree, like, that kinda threw me off as well when you read that, and I think that this would, like it has to be, like, because I think this is very common at a lot of schools. I don't think there are a lot of, um, like, services provided for teachers or students, honestly, like, depending on the district, but I think that, like, a possible idea that could be used is, like, students have clubs, and I know it's, like, hard, like, teachers do so much already, but, like, if they wanted to join, like, a club with just their teachers or their peers and their coworkers where, like, if they wanna talk about stuff, they can, or if not, they're at least promoting, like, the importance of mental health and just discussing things, like, I think teachers the closest thing they have to that right now is, like, the teacher's lounge where they can just all chat and vent about, like, how Miss A mentioned, like, just venting to her coworkers and stuff like that, but I think, like, having a place where they can reach out to each other one-on-one about those feelings and, like, know that they have a community of people that would support them no matter what, and, like, if they as somebody okay, this sounds super silly maybe, but as somebody that's in a sorority, like, we have, people that have designated positions in there, like, I'm our risk management, so I'm in charge of, like, making sure that girls are okay, and if that they do experience any type of, sexual assault or just any incident that they feel put them in an uncomfortable situation, that I can be there for them and that they have somebody within the sorority that they know they can talk to, and I think, like, having a different teacher that can be that person, like, it's a lot of work, I'm not saying it's easy, I don't know, I'm just trying to think outside of the box on what people could do for that, because it is difficult because, I understand, like, as much as, like, they may want to be there for their teachers, funding is such an issue within schools that it's kinda like they have to be there for each other and make that choice to be a community, or at least have administration lead that as an option.
I think that's a good idea. I feel like it would kind of be hard to implement because teachers already have so many things that they have to focus on. Like they have to think about their students, and then if the school has clubs, they have to think about the students' clubs and all of that. But the idea you had sounds great, and I'm really surprised that no, not surprised that you're sorority. It's nice to know that your sorority has has something like that because I don't really know a lot about sororities, but I know my cousin's in one, and I don't think her sorority has anything like that. It's more of if you have a big, talk to your big about it, and your big will do something. But hearing that your sorority has that sounds really nice.
Thank you. Yeah, and that literally I just thought of it on the spot as we're kind of talking about this. So it's obviously definitely you'd have to think out the plan a lot harder than what I just did. But I'm just trying to think because it is hard. They can't pay for a therapist for every single one of their teachers and every single one of their students. Like there's only so much that schools can do, but it's finding ideas that work within the school system. And I think that's why it's awesome that we're having this conversation. As I've said like a million times, like I think this is so great says this isn't just between us. Like there's people that can listen to this and, come up with their own ideas within their own classrooms and their own administration and stuff like that.
I feel like there should be more things offered for teachers because recently, or maybe probably not recently, it's been happening for like the past year. I've seen this probably isn't a reliable source, but a lot of teachers on TikTok like to post stuff like how their classrooms are doing. But recently, or okay, not recently, like in the past year, I said this like 3 times, but the teachers that I've been following on TikTok, they've been like leaving their classrooms because it's really affecting their mental health. And many of them are just like, I love my class and I wish I could still teach, but it's either the pay isn't good or the students keep misbehaving and they're not understanding, or like they're misbehaving because a lot of the new elementary schoolers these days are coming in from being online for the past 2 years, so they're not sure how to like act in a classroom. And teachers don't really know or like they can't like force students to like they can't put the students into a mold immediately, so it's really taking a toll on their mental health. It made sense in my mind.
No, what you're saying still it makes sense because with what everything that is with what COVID like created it to be, there's a lot of work that like needs to be done within the school systems in general. And especially I think targeting mental health for all students and teachers is like so important because it is where I think a lot of the behavioral issues are happening and stuff. But it's really difficult to pinpoint, like, the correct thing to do, like, the exact way you can fix it, but I get what you're saying, because it definitely is an issue, and, like, there's so many student or teachers that are becoming unmotivated to teach because there's a giant gap in their students' education. They're picking up not only for the education that or, like, curriculum they're supposed to be teaching that year, but they're also helping students come back from the 2 years that they missed of actual learning, in-person learning, because, yeah, people or students hopefully were paying attention behind the screens, but there's no guarantee people were. They could have turned their cameras off and walked away. Or it's just hard for them to learn in an online environment. Like, I know I'm, what's the word? Not visual, kinesinetic, where I have to like move things to teach. Some people, there's very different types of learners in every classroom. And although some people are visual, like, and they can work through a virtual learning, there are other students who need to be hands-on in the classroom to be able to fully understand what the education they're getting.
So, some potential solutions we found were a high school in Palo Alto, California, created a wellness center that provides students help and a place to cope with their problems, in which they offer different activities and snacks that students can have, while also giving the opportunity to talk to a school nurse or a licensed clinician.
Another solution is that educators should gain some experience in some type of way to be better prepared for when a student needs help. Ways they'd be able to is by a program created by the University of Arkansas that shares ways for educators to use medical sciences in classrooms. This is not limited to educators, but principals, teachers, and staff are encouraged to interact with mental health professionals and staff at the school in order to gain ideas and a better understanding of how to help children in their vicinity.
Overall, along with the two solutions mentioned by Marvea and Ellie right now, I think we mentioned a lot of other solutions within this podcast, and we hope that you understand why there is such a crisis going on with mental health within the education system after listening to this podcast and feel empowered to either do something about it or at least start discussions within your own community. Also, if you are an educator or administration within the education system, we hope that some of these solutions inspire you to take action within your own schools. And if you do feel like you have any questions about anything we mentioned, feel free to reach out to us at our socials or Instagram. My Instagram is Presley K Perez, PresleykPerez.
My Instagram is at Marbella, MARBELLAAH.
My Instagram is mochi mochi, like the food you eat, with the numbers 365 at the end.
My Instagram is my name, Ellie.Martinez. It has 3 Z's, so that's ELLIE period MARTINEZZZ.
Thank you guys for listening, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.